They arrived from all directions, mostly on foot but also in strollers, on Dad's back, on stilts and in wheelchairs, although many were left stranded when the bus and rail network was unable to cope. Thousands carried banners, paper doves, United Nations flags and placards. "Kill Bush, Blair, Sharon and Howard," said one, but it missed the mood of the rally, which was serious but good-natured. Closer to the mark was the popular, "Somewhere in Texas a village is missing its idiot, no war." Signs were everywhere and "No war" t-shirts sold by the Greens were disappearing fast even before the rally started just after noon. Tom Moran, the former Labour Party minister who first took part in an anti-war march in 1969, said, "I've never seen anything like it." As the crowd grew, it was difficult to move in parts of the park. Peter Baum, Bob Brown, and Lori Barron lead the march. Credit. Rick Stevens. Dozens sought a vantage point on the roof of the entrance to St. James Station in Elizabeth Street, and the nearby coffee shop, while others climbed trees. Applause and laughter greeted an effigy of George Bush towing an effigy of John Howard as a dog with his nose regularly making contact with the U.S. president's backside. Thunderous cheers and applause greeted speakers, including the Greens' Senator Bob Brown and the journalist John Pilger. Just before the rally got underway, Senator Brown told the Herald, "This is going to send a message to our Prime Minister that he cannot ignore. This is democracy on the move." The former Liberal minister Peter Baum, now Chancellor of the Australian National University, said backstage, "We have never started a war. Why start now?" Commenting on the crowd, he said, "There's a message there, and if the government don't listen to it they are mugs." A few meters away from him, the NSW Deputy Premier, Andrew Refs Hauga, stood talking to members of the crowd. At 1:10 p.m. the march got underway, or at least it did for those in Elizabeth Street. For those near the stage, making the 100 meters to the street, normally covered in a minute or so, took the best part of an hour. Just before 2 p.m. a decision to divert the march down Art Gallery Road and into the Domain was taken by organizers, on the advice of the police, who believed the numbers made it impossible to steer them back into Hyde Park. Once there, the marchers collapsed onto the grass in the heat, many seeking some shade under trees. "It was beyond everybody's expectations," said Bruce Childs, a spokesman for the Walk Against the War Coalition. "We knew it was going to be big, but didn't realize it was going to be as big as it was." He believed about 300,000 people had walked the route. A spokesman for State Transit said it had underestimated the size of the crowd, many of whom were forced to walk many kilometers into town when bulging trains, buses and light rail left thousands behind. Extra services were added in the afternoon as people left. Adding to the chaos, the North Shore line was closed yesterday due to track work. Buses were brought in to replace the trains. War of the Words placards spotted among the marchers yesterday. Somewhere in Texas a village has lost its idiot. The word as Bush's fridge magnate fight plaque not Iraq war is so 20th century stop mad cowboy disease war begins with dubioxis of weasels. That's oil folks. If it's not UN it's not on. How many lives per gallon? Not in my name, not with my tax. Weapons of mass distraction. Crowds in Market Street, Sydney. Credit. Rick Stevens. City throbs to drumbeat of peace. The Grim Reaper came, and girls in tutus, all passionately against the war. Valerie Lawson writes, "The People's Army marched as one, with one voice, one heartbeat, through the streets of Sydney. To the insistent rhythm of the chant, 'No war, no war,' punctuated by 3 hand claps, they marched as they sang, as they whistled, as they cheered. 'No war, no war,' cried the little girl in a pink fairy dress, the pregnant woman with a peace sign painted on her belly, the man chattering on his mobile dressed as the Grim Reaper, the 33 members of the Wayward Wanderers bushwalking group, the Quakers, the Palestinians, the Peace Angels, Masava Arellano, a schoolgirl in a Frangipani necklace and with a peace banner wrapped round her head, and Chloe, 9 months, on her first march. As the bushwalking leader, Mike Heffernan, said, 'It makes you proud to be a Sydney-sider.'" The city, and the state, rallied in Hyde Park, then marched through 4 streets, as about 250,000 joined in a show of anti-war unity not seen in Sydney for 30 years. Nancy Gill, 82, of Newport Beach, was one of the thousands who stood shoulder to shoulder at noon, blanketed in 30-degree-plus heat in Hyde Park. "I've been through one war, and that was enough," she said. "I'm dead against wars, and especially this one." Graham Morgan and his wife, Heather, had come down from Kilcare, on the Central Coast. Before yesterday, Mr. Morgan had no need to protest against war. "But what we are talking about now is the most inhumane form of killing people. That's bombing, with freewheeling spirit." Some marchers went round and round the route, while others mapped out their journeys, backtracking, branching off, many ending up in the Domain, where the first band of marchers was sent by organizers to avoid a dangerous, heart-stopping crush back at Hyde Park. At noon, the paths round Archibald Fountain were an unofficial parade ground of protest groups such as the Bushwalkers, each bearing aloft a polystyrene white dove, and the Sydney Anti-Bases Pine Gap Coalition, wearing white paper lantern hats shaped like the domes of Pine Gap. "Is this where the Society of Friends are meeting?" asked one woman. "No, they were assembling elsewhere, near the white satin-gowned, white-winged peace angels, among them the model Julie Healy." The color of the day was purple, with many marchers sporting purple satin ribbons, and others dressed top to toe in shades of lavender, mauve or deep purple. White-winged peace angels join the protest. Credit: Peter Ray. As Alexander Thoreau once wrote, "Purple combines blue, spirituality and nobility, and red, courage and virility, symbolizing wit, intelligence, knowledge, religious devotion, sanctity, humility, sobriety, penitence and sorrow." One woman tottered in purple mules, stiletto-heeled, while Peter Wright, a Korean War veteran from Springwood, wore a purple ribbon on his blue shirt. He had journeyed from the Blue Mountains with other blue-garbed travelers, and sat on a curb in Park Street when the marshals cried out, "If you're against the war, sit down." Mr. Wright, a retired electrician in his 70s, was marching alone. His wife was at home. "She's a Howard supporter, right or wrong. Our family are polarized." "And his children?" He brought out some family photos wrapped in a white tissue. "All deceased." We marched on, under the face of Picasso, smiling ruefully down on the crowd from banners advertising an exhibition at the Art Gallery of NSW, the Grim Reaper, holding a sign saying, "Overworked. Pay rise now," asked for directions. He could not see clearly through the black veil covering his face. Few were eager to help. "I seem like a bad omen," which at the war talk is. His name was Mark Anderson, and he had found his costume, complete with rubbery skeleton gloves and shoes, in a costume shop. Where was he from? England. "All dark and miserable things come from England, don't they?" a woman said. This march shows the multicultural nature of the city, and it did, as groups assembled with national flags at the front of the march. They cheered the prancing, friendly Fire Street Theatre actors on stilts dressed as George Bush and his marionette, John Howard. Another puppet pair showed Bush, trailed by Howard as a dog, sliding back and forth near the president's rear. Down Elizabeth Street, down King Street, where the steady rhythm of commerce continued in the jewelry stores, where shop assistants stood at the doors, bemused by this interruption to normal trading. The chant continued, "No war, no war," a message echoed on a small cardboard sign worn round the neck of a whippet named Mr. Percy, and a woman in a mauve hat holding a placard, "Bugger off Bush, up George Street." And Patricia Caffilin, 72, said, "I hope the message gets through." Did she march against the Vietnam War? "No, I was too busy looking after children." Her 4 grandchildren were alongside her, 2 in strollers. "What do we want? Peace. And do we want it now?" We arrived, at last, at the Domain, where 7 police sat by the closed public toilets. "It's good to see so many cops guarding the dunnies," one woman shouted, not really upset. The police left. Other marchers flung themselves and their banners onto the grass, bringing out lunch, looking lost. There was no full stop to the day. Others ended their long afternoon in the Royal Botanic Gardens, trailing after a band of drummers, the beat on the steel drums waking the bats from their Sunday slumber. Finally, the People's Army had come to rest. As Marcher Jackie Woods had said earlier, who knows if it will achieve anything. She had to march, though, like the 250,000 others. I feel like it's out of control and this is the only way I can express how I feel.